All right, welcome back, my friends. It is time for another retro review reaction, and I stumbled across this one, the 1991 Mitsubishi Diamante. This one kind of caught my eye. Well, I'm not a huge fan of Mitsubishis, at least not now. Back in the day, they made some really cool stuff, and you know, they were pretty reliable, but they were always a little cheaper. I mean, I'm excluding like the Evo, but looking at the Gallant, the Diamante, what became the Dodge Colt, you know, they were always a little cheaper, a little coarser than the Honda and Toyota offerings. And they were always right there at being with the best of Nissan and Mazda and Honda and Toyota and everything else. And some of their stuff was really, really good. Some of their sport utilities were absolutely fantastic. And of course the Eclipse, especially in all-wheel drive form, was an absolute blast. I really missed that car. And then they kind of lost their way. So this to me is kind of I want to look back at a contemporary review of this car that I really think was right there of not really luxury, but being kind of more premium than some of the other offerings that were out there. I just find it an interesting idea. So let's take a look and see what they said back when it was new.
Possible by TireRack.com, RockAuto.com, and State Farm.
Over the last 5 years, the Acura Legend, Lexus LS400, and Infiniti Q45 have completely redefined the luxury car market. No longer do we measure the best in luxury by only German standards. But only so many people can afford $40,000 plus transportation. That's why attention is now turning to the so-called near luxury market, a growing niche currently defined by the Nissan Maxima, 3 Series BMW, Audi 90, Infiniti G20, and Acura's new Vigor. But hold on, there's another new player who may cause the near luxury definition to change. It's the Diamante, Mitsubishi's technology pack successor for the Sigma. But will its German looks wrapped around Japanese electronics appeal to American taste?
So let's not forget Mazda came out with the Amati, and that was, well, they were going to come out with the Amati, and they ended up coming out with the Millennia when their luxury car division was canceled. I find this an interesting comparison. They're talking about luxury cars, and then they mention near luxury like the 3 Series or the Infiniti G20, but this is a substantially larger car than that. And I think that's what hampered it. If they were really going after Acura, Infiniti, and Lexus, then the Mitsubishi name is going to hold them back when they sell cheap hatchbacks at the same time. So this is more of a competitor, I would say, Oldsmobile, Buick, Mercury, Lincoln, something like that. Not really stretching up there, but being bigger and nicer perhaps than the low end of those other manufacturers he mentioned. What I'm going to say right here that jumped out at me, and I've never really noticed it, from this angle, this looks a lot like the Lincoln LS, which I really am a big fan of. I like that boring look of it, but dang, for all the world, that looks like a Lincoln LS to me, certainly along the side and the way the rear end is treated. Let's see what they say. I'm interested.
It will if those Americans are at least somewhat partial to the Diamante's less expensive relative, the Galant sedan, and Mitsubishi's Technology Pack 3000 GT Sports Coupe. The Diamante, which is Spanish for diamond, has a front end that bears an unmistakable Mitsubishi family resemblance, but one that looks like it could come by way of a European styling studio. Indeed, from the grille on back, there are strong hints of Mercedes and BMW in its flowing lines. The Diamante styling is an excellent example of how the Japanese can assimilate facets of one culture and sell them to another.
Yeah, and I'll say on the side, pure side view right there, and then also at the rear, it looks a little bit like a big Honda Accord. Honestly, not at the front quite so much. I'm torn on the front. It's got a huge overhang for that bumper. Looks a little disproportionate at the front, but overall, I think this is a very attractive car. This is the kind of boring, staid, Japanese early 90s that just really, really appeals to me. And for all the world, it looks oh boy, it looks a lot like a Honda to me.
The skin may be inspired by Europe's best, but what's under it are the jewels of Japanese technology, starting with the 3-liter V6 engine. Its shopping list of features includes dual overhead cams, 24 valves, electronically controlled fuel injection and ignition timing, and Mitsubishi's variable induction controls. It all comes together in our top-line Diamante LS test car to produce 202 horsepower and 199 pound-feet of torque. The base Diamante uses a single-cam version of the same engine that makes 175 horsepower. On the test track, our car managed a respectable 0 to 60 time of 9.2 seconds and conquered the quarter mile in 17 seconds at 85 miles per hour.
I mean, 200 horsepower isn't anything to sneeze at. I mean, these days, you know, you can get that from a 4-cylinder, but that's nothing bad. 9.2 sounds a little slow, just a touch. And I think part of it is if you watch that part when they hit the gas and it starts accelerating, it sounds like it takes a long time for that engine to rev up. I think that 199 torques, a little weak, maybe. A little weak for this car. Doesn't feel like maybe it had a lot of oomph there.
The electronic controls continue in the 4-speed automatic transmission, which can be switched between power and economy modes. This allows the driver to select either smoother, more economical operation or a higher shifting mode with instant kickdown for passing. In either setting, the transmission functions so smoothly that we were almost unaware of its operation. But the technology goes a lot deeper than just a fancy engine and transmission. The Diamante also features the most advanced front-drive traction control system on the market. Like other systems, this traction control retards engine speed to limit wheel spin under hard acceleration. However, the Mitsubishi system also incorporates what they call trace control. Trace reduces engine power in corners to limit understeer or push, thus allowing the car to hold to a tighter cornering line. Our standard slalom tests fail to show the system's operation as well as the demonstration video, probably due to its excessively tight corners. But our drivers found the throttle changes to be very obvious. They acknowledged the system's safety value to the average driver, but relinquishing throttle control to the car offended our enthusiast sensibilities. Trace, which is switched on and off by a console switch, is part of the LS grade car's Euro handling package. The package also includes computer-controlled shock damping and adjustable ride height.
You know, I want to jump in here. I've never heard of that before. Again, my entire life I've read auto magazines and watched reviews, and maybe I have heard about it and just completely forgot about it. But at a time when anti-lock braking was becoming more expected, and I'd like to point out it has a 4-speed automatic. GM was like, well, you can make a 4-speed? This traction control is really interesting. I don't think it's unusual to have a traction control, but for them to use it to tighten the line, reduce understeer, I honestly, guys, maybe I just missed it in my past somewhere. I've never heard of that, and that strikes me as super advanced. I mean, Mitsubishi with their all-wheel drive and systems, their turbocharging, their sports cars, they were, in a lot of ways, they were cutting edge on the electronics they were using. Nissan did a lot of the same things and had 4-wheel steering. I think Honda did on maybe the Prelude too. But this one kind of surprises me, and I can't really articulate why. It strikes me that Mitsubishi, now that we think of being, a little dowdy, honestly, it's easy to forget just how cutting edge they were back in the day. It's really, really impressive. I don't know that I'd like the system, but I'm not going to drive that aggressively, where maybe I want it to kick in.
Despite all this weight-adding technology, our 3,700-pound Diamante LS still easily held its own in corners with the likes of an Audi 90 or Mercedes 190. Highway driving is also a very German experience. With the adjustable suspension in its soft setting, the Diamante delivers a plush yet controlled luxury car ride. Fuel mileage is EPA estimated to be 18 city, 24 highway. We got 22 miles per gallon. Anti-lock brakes are standard on the LS and optional on the base car. They stopped our car from 60 in a short average distance of 116 feet.
You know, I'd like to say I was watching a Motorweek yesterday, and it was I think it was a 91 Cadillac Eldorado. It might have been an 88, but I think it was the 91. That gas mileage is almost exactly what the V8 Eldorado got, and that stopping distance is 15 feet longer than the Eldorado, and that Eldorado is admittedly a much, much bigger car. That's kind of okay, I guess. For a company that in the 90s I associated, 80s, 90s, I associated Mitsubishi with sportiness, but you know, like a harsh sportiness, and you know, really throwing technology at stuff, kind of what Nissan has done as well at times. Those are a little underwhelming. It strikes me as just okay, not bad, not horrible, just why isn't it so much better? Is it Mitsubishi couldn't be better, or was Cadillac perhaps better than we thought?
As expected, lockup and fade were non-existent. Stability was excellent. Technology may be this diamond's most obvious facet, but luxury is hardly lacking. Our test car's interior had enough artificial wood and optional real leather trim for 2 Mercedes. Front passenger room is very generous, but the wraparound cockpit design promotes a very intimate feel.
I love this interior. I'm not sure I like that color. It looks a little dour, a little boring. But I like that they use two-tone. You've heard me talk about that before. I like that in my Honda. I've got a black upper and beige lowers and seats and everything else. So this really appeals to me. This strikes me at the heart of early 90s Japanese interiors, but with more style, with more flair. You know, they didn't do something stupid with the gear shift here. When manufacturers started to go to a thin rod with a T at the top of it, it just looked cheap. This looks rich. It really, really does. I mean, you've got to step back to the time it was being built for. This looks really, really good, and I want to reference that Eldorado I just talked about. When you look at the dashboard in that bad boy, it is squared off like this. It's a rectangle in front of you. And I love this eyebrow over the gauge cluster, the swoop, the fact that they carry, where these 2 central vents are, they carry a wood line out horizontally. That's the same kind of styling you're seeing right now come up in certainly Lincolns, and then also the latest Grand Cherokee and the redesigned Compass. They're actually putting horizontal strips, and I really, really like that. And I like this little pod right here where they've got a incredibly generic stereo and the AC controls. I like this interior, guys. This looks plush. It looks luxurious. It's really impressive to me.
Under all that trim is a dash design that's very efficient, more so than in many European cars. Satellite radio controls reside on the LS steering wheel along with a standard driver's side airbag. The seats are European firm and boast 7-way power adjustments. They're a new Mitsubishi design that's claimed to reduce fatigue by supporting the body's center of gravity, but we found them to be less comfortable than the seats in the last Galant that we tested. However, we liked having the seat memory switch located on a ceiling console. The German-style controls for heat and ventilation are well marked and easy to reach, though the indicator lights don't show up well in daylight. A power sunroof is optional on all models. The stereo in our car included a standard AM/FM cassette and an optional compact disc player. The controls are efficient and the sound is crisp. The rear seat offers plenty of legroom, but headroom is a bit tight. The Diamante actually has less rear seat room than the Galant. Prices for this near luxury car start at $19,939 for the base car. The LS starts at $25,135. Our fully loaded LS with leather, CD player, and the Euro handling package comes to $30,117. By comparison, a loaded Nissan Maxima SE will cost you less. It offers similar ride and handling qualities despite its lack of sophisticated electronics.
And I like the Maxima. I mean, I like what the Maxima used to be when it was trying to be the four-door sports car, right? The new ones are a weird combination, in my opinion. They're like large outside, they're roomy inside, but they're still trying to have more of a sporty feel. And just, they're more of a long-distance cruiser than anything else. So the Maxima back then, I really liked it. But I gotta say, in terms of exterior styling and the interior of this Diamante, I would much rather have it than the Maxima.
Granted, it doesn't have the extra safety factor of the Diamante's trace system. The Maxima's interior is much less opulent, but it does have a larger trunk. While our staff universally liked the Diamante's exterior and interior treatments, they were evenly divided on its technical features. While some considered its sophisticated electronics overdone, others hailed it as the trendsetter for both near luxury and pure luxury-oriented sports sedans. Regardless, all acknowledged that it will redefine its class. No other sedan of any distinction so successfully combines European style with Asian technology. That alone makes this diamond shine with brilliance.
Well, and I think they got that wrong. I don't think the Diamante went on to redefine any class whatsoever. And I think that would be because of the Mitsubishi name on it, honestly. As you know, when I do these, one of my favorite thought experiments is, would I choose this car? And I got to admit, I'm alternately impressed and a little disappointed at this review and at the car. On the one hand, at the time, I had a very high opinion of Mitsubishi's reliability. I think that interior is fantastic. And I like the technology. I mean, an advanced double overhead cam, computer-controlled engine, a 4-speed transmission, and these technology things they were throwing in there with Japanese reliability, European-style ride. I really see a lot of benefits here that tick my boxes. And certainly, again, I want to compare to that Eldorado because I just watched it. Okay, I'm not saying the Diamante and the Cadillac are exactly comparable, but this is thousands and thousands of dollars less, many thousands of dollars less. But when you start to consider the Legend, was it Q45, the LS from Lexus, why would you buy the Mitsubishi? Its detriments of that rear seat space and not fantastic gas. It seems like a really good attempt that was about this close and then hampered by the name. If I had $25,000, $30,000 and it was 1991, I might drive this car. I might be impressed with this car. And there's a part of me right now that says, yeah, I think I'd like that. I'd like to drive one right now, as a matter of fact. Because Mitsubishi, they would swing for the fences, guys. They absolutely were producing some really cool stuff, and they never quite got the recognition I feel they deserved because they were overshadowed by Nissan, Honda, and Toyota. I think this car would appeal to me if it was 1991. But would I choose it over some other options out there that were a more exclusive brand name but still had fantastic reliability? I just don't think so. And I think maybe that opinion is what hurt this car, right? You know, for the American loyalists, I can have a Lincoln, I can have a Cadillac. For the yuppies who wanted something more technologically advanced and maybe a tighter package, a crisper package, this might appeal to them, but then all of a sudden there's luxury brands that you could also go jump into. And let's not forget that right after this, is when Cadillac revitalized their entire lineup with the new STS and shoot, I forgot the other one. Another platform, and that North Star came out, which before we all knew it was unreliable, was an amazing looking engine on paper and very good performer. I just feel like this car got trapped with the name and never quite being exceptional. I mean, for it to come out as a Mitsubishi, it has to wow in every single aspect. And I'm afraid that people who are looking at that Mercedes and willing to spend the money get in the back seat and think, oh, this is a little tighter than I wanted. For me, this is an appealing car. For me, I think that I would probably love this car and love to drive it and love the seats and the dash and everything else. But if I was back then in 1991, I just don't know that I'd end up buying it. And I think that might have been its downfall. Many, many people thinking just like that. Let me know your thoughts below, guys. This is really interesting, and you can tell by my waffling, I'm pretty torn on this one. I feel like I would love it, but for the life of me, I can't think of why I would buy it over some of the other options. Thanks for being here, guys. I appreciate it.